Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. This is a place where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So wherever you're joining us, whether it again be in your living room, in your on the highway as you drive, wherever you join us, we want to say we're so thankful you're here. And as always, please consider donating. There's a link below in the description, so please go there if you want to donate. Also, if you want to subscribe, the buttons are there, the little bells there to let you know every time we have a new video come up. Do that. Join us in sharing these beautiful messages. We think the gospel message of Jesus is worth sharing. There's so much beauty there of how to be a better and better human being. So we've been moving through the Sermon on the Mount. We've been talking about this in detail. We've been basically going verse by verse, because there's so much rich beauty there when you really delve into it. And so we understood when Jesus goes up onto the mountain, we also correlate that. If you were a Jewish person reading this at that point in time, you would immediately make the connection. Jesus is the next messianic figure. He is the next Moses. He is the next David. He is the one that's going to usher Israel into a new kind of place, into a new being, into a new way of living and being human. That's Jesus. And so they make all these interesting connections to Jesus and Moses, this being one of them. He goes up onto the mountain and he begins expanding on the law, what it means to be human, how we live together harmoniously. And so again, the Sermon on the Mount is a deeper critique into the heart of the law. It reclaims the beauty of how to live life in harmony, how to live it together in harmony. It's really beautiful, and it's essentially teaching us how to be better human beings. And so we went through all of this together, and we understood that when this is given, this was at a time when Israel loses its temple. It was ransacked, and thousands of people were murdered who weren't able to run to the hills. This happened in 70 AD. And the message of Jesus comes after this takes place. This message is given out, written down, shared after this experience. Because Jesus' message is, again, very simply this: you are now the temple. You're the place where spiritual life happens. You are the living, breathing reality. Go be that to the world. Beautiful. And so we went through all of these different teachings, and we understood that the happy are you if you do these things. So we talked about those. Now, today, we're going to talk about oaths. This one, this oath discussion, it's really interesting to me because growing up, I never heard about this one. Divorce, yeah, we talked about divorce and idolatry and adultery, and we talked about those things. But we didn't talk about oaths. Oaths was kind of a boring one because no one's taken them. No one's sitting there saying, I take an oath to do this and this and this. Very rarely, right? But when you understand the oath-taking process, when you understand the context, it all begins to make sense. It all begins to make sense when you look within context. So let's look at the verse. Here we go. Matthew 5:33 through 37. It says this: Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. So again, Jesus points back toward the old teachings. He says, this is what you've heard before, right? But I tell you, and again, this is very typical rabbinical way of living. They would say, this is what the Torah says, but let me give you the twist, right? Let me give you the twist. I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is at his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair black or white. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one. Interesting, right? Don't swear by oaths. So what Jesus is doing here is he's actually borrowing, the writers are actually borrowing from the Old Testament. And so Numbers 30 verse 2, it says this: If a man takes a vow to Yahweh or takes an oath of binding obligation on himself, he must not break his word, but must do whatever he has promised. You can also find this Leviticus 19:12, Deuteronomy 10:20, 23 verse 21. You can find this everywhere. The oath-taking process was a very common one for them. Not so much common to us today. But what happened is they had this oath process where they would basically say, I swear to keep my word. I swear on this to keep my word, which essentially gave it some levity. If I swear by this, then I'm going to keep my vow. And so swearing on Yahweh's name, that was a biggie. So when you said that, you were basically telling people, I am going to do exactly what I say. And it was a pretty strong statement. Now, push forward, 1,000 years, push forward many, many years of this, and what you have happen in the first century is you have a group of people called the Pharisees. And so the Pharisees, they took the oath-taking process, and of course they did what they do. They legalized it. They made it into a bunch of lifeless rules and regulations. And again, rules and regulations, if you see them only as that, not there to essentially make community better, but just to be observed and followed and regulated, then you can always find loopholes. And so this is what happens with the Pharisees. So one scholar says this about the Pharisees and oath-taking. He says this, they instituted a hierarchical structure for taking oaths. One could swear by anything. And in their way of thinking, as long as you were not swearing by Yahweh, the vow could be broken. But the greater the value of the thing being invoked in the oath, the more reliable the oath. Thus, if I were to swear by the shirt on my back, such an oath would be taken somewhat lightly. But if I were to swear by the temple, now that would be an oath I would be much more likely to keep. Yeah. So what you have, basically, the Pharisees are cheapening their words. They're cheapening the whole process. The Pharisees began making so many oaths, he says, and promises that their words lacked integrity to the populace at large. So the religious institution essentially loses credibility because the Pharisees were making so many pledges and promises knowing they weren't going to keep them. And so it kind of became this thing where, who do I trust? Everyone makes a promise, right? Everyone's making these promises. Who do I trust? Well, I can't trust the religious system either. Do you see what's going on here? That was the deeper heart and the issue of the oath-taking process. It was essentially cheapening your words. And so I wonder for you, take a moment. Have you ever made a promise and not kept it? Have you ever made a promise to someone and you didn't follow through? Like, how did that feel for you? You promised them you would do this thing and you didn't. Maybe you forgot. Maybe it was just simply you forgot. Or maybe you just didn't want to do it. And to get them out of your hair, you just said, yeah, I promised to be there, knowing full well you wouldn't. I wonder what that relationship looks like now. I wonder how much you are trusted with what you say you're going to do. Promises actually are pretty weighty. Promises are pretty weighty. And I think that's why Jesus says, don't even make them at all. If you're not going to keep them, just don't make them. If you are even questioning for a second whether you might or might not, don't even do it. Be a person of substance. Promises. Think about this. We talked about this last week. 41% of marriages end in divorces. Marriages where people say, I pledge, I promise to be with you fully for life. Interesting. You've seen some of the verbiage change in weddings. Not all the time, though, but some, they've actually omitted this for life. I promise to be with you as long as we're together. Do you see how things shift a little bit? And maybe that's for the better, because maybe we need to be people who are willing to fully promise or commit, and when we're not, just be open about it. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting though, right? Think about this one. Politicians. We are in this state right now where we have all these candidates and they're promising everything, right? We're going to give you free tuition. Well, free tuition at what cost? We're going to give you free tuition, but we're also going to raise your taxes? Yeah, that doesn't quite level out, does it? They give you all of these promises right now. We're going to do this and this and this and this. But deep down, our political system is so broken. And I think deep down, most of us, when we hear these promises, we know they're not going to follow through. The oath is cheap. Our politics, interesting. Politicians promise you heaven before election and they give you hell after. That's Emma Goldman. A lot of truth there. We live in a culture right now where people's word is cheap. It's not valued. Promises mean everything, but after they've been broken, they mean nothing. And the relationship hurts, right? The relationship is hurt. It's bent. We begin wondering, can I promise this person, or can I believe this person's promise again? Do I really trust the person? So yeah, our political system, broken. So many things in our culture, broken. We don't trust. Do we trust each other in our relationships? Do we trust the people we are around in community? Because if it doesn't start there, we can't go globally, can we? It has to start with the relationships we have, with the communities we've formed. We have to begin being people of our word. And so again, here's one of my favorite stories. I wanted to share this with you. Wayne Williams, he and his dad, they were Cub fans, and they watched the games every year. Now the Cubs, they hadn't been to a World Series since 1908. And so for he and his dad, they promised each other, if the World Series happens, you and I, we're going to watch it together. And so he and his dad would watch games after games, and they disappoint him. It's like me, a Lions fan. I'm never going to see my team win, I feel like. But they would watch it over and over again. Now, his dad died at a very early age, 53. And so Wayne grew up year after year watching these games without his dad. Now, if you are a Cubs fan, you'll know, I think it was around 2016, the Cubs go to the World Series. And Wayne doesn't have his dad to watch it. And so what Wayne does here is interesting. And this was on different, I think it was on CBS and even NBC. Wayne decided, I am going to go to the game, but I'm going to bring my dad. So he found a way, and in the end, he actually, instead of taking the camera and videoing it and all of that, he actually went to the gravesite. He said, I'm going to go to the gravesite of my dad, and I'm going to tune it in on my phone, and I'm going to watch the World Series, our team, Chicago team. I'm going to watch them play, and I'm going to watch it right there with my dad. And one of the camera people kind of, oh, that's interesting, but they asked the question, why? Why would you do this? Like, your dad's dead. Isn't like the promise kind of? And he said this, I don't know for sure if dad was actually with me, but I believe our word is sometimes the only honest thing we can give away anymore. I keep my word. I thought that is so beautiful. When I hear about Wayne, I think that's someone I can trust with his word. Can you imagine if that's how you and I were in everything we did? When we said, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to follow through. You can trust me. You're moving tomorrow, I will be there at 8. Those kind of people are so rare in our world right now. And I think that's what Jesus is saying here. Those people are the people we need to usher in shalom. People who honor their word. They follow through. Those are the people. Yeah, take an oath because their word is gold. If you're not going to follow through, don't promise it at all. Be people that follow your word. Be people who have an ethic, who say, when I do something, when I say I'm going to do it, I am going to do it. So my question to you might be this: how important is your word? Do you take it lightly, or when someone asks you to do something and you promise, is that something heavy for you? Are you going to follow through? I think we need friendships and community. We need people like that to usher in this new reality. And so in Jesus' words, I might say something like this: keep your promises. Sometimes it's all we have to give. If you want to live in a space where you are experiencing the divine every day, I think this plays a part. Keeping your word, keeping your promises, being a person of substance, that's life. So how do we do it? Because if we don't talk about how we do it, again, I think the whole thing kind of falls apart. How do we actually live out these principles? I can know these principles, but if I don't actually know how to follow through on them, it's worthless. So here we go. We took some ideas from a couple friends, and I thought these were good. So let me show you. Number one, if I want to be a person who honors my word, one process, one activity I might follow is to write down the promise, write down the oath. So again, it's almost magical. When you write down the thing, when you say, I'm going to do this thing, and you write it down, you're actually, and be specific. When you say, I'm going to do this thing, write it down. It actually has now, it's taken on an educational process here. You write it down, it goes from here to here to here. Write the thing down so that you don't forget it. It's right there. Another one is make it visible. After you write it down, put that thing somewhere. Put it somewhere where you're going to see it, right? If you said, I promise to walk with you in your weight loss process, then write that promise down, put it somewhere where you're going to constantly be reminded, I need to be there for my friend, right? I'm going to be there. I'm going to be the very best friend there. I'm going to send them periodic messages. That's what I'm going to do because it's present visually. Everywhere I go, I'm going to see it. Another one, chart your daily actions. We have iPhones, right? We have these smartphones, and we have all these different apps that can help us in this process. And so daily is the best way to keep check. Daily, you can look and be reminded, this is what I promised to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. Another one is this, keep it short term. I think for many of us, it's so easy to make promises that are like a year plus in advance. Maybe limit yourself on those. Keep your promises to short term, right? I promise for the next 6 months. That's a pretty long one. I promise for the next month, I'm gonna text you every day. I've got my calendar set up. It's gonna remind me. I've got it posted. I'm gonna call you every day, and I'm gonna let you know what I'm grateful for and ask what you're grateful for. Do you see the beauty of this? My promises I can keep, right? I can do these things, especially if I keep them short term. I think that's a goal. So in the words of Jesus, one more time, keep your promises. Sometimes it's all we have to give. Be people of your word. When we do, we usher in shalom. I hope you enjoyed this. And as always, please consider donating. Ethos-Church.org/donate. Give there, tax deductible. We'd love to have you partner with us. And as always, if you want to be involved twice a month, the first and the third of every month, please email me, Tony, WUERFEL @gmail.com, and I will send you a link so that you know when we're about to start our living room sessions. And there in the living room sessions, you'll see Zoom. You'll see all these different living rooms all across the nation. And there you can have open online discussions live with all of us about faith and deconstruction and what it all looks like, how to live it out. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed us. I hope this was meaningful for you. Subscribe. Let us know that you're following with us. And as always, the teachings of Jesus, they're so filled with life. And I hope that as you begin walking in these things too, you will see changes, not only in you, but your family, your friends, and your community. Everyone, take care. I love you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.